Saw this article this morning in Housing Wire. Economic jitters are stressing out LOs and their clients. Rapid rate dip reversal has left buyers and loan officers navigating heightened anxiety and reactive rush or pause behavior. Well, start off with this. If anyone is employing this rush or pause technique, if you will, then you should reanalyze your strategy. And I will get into it here with data to back it up. The article kind of goes on to say that several loan officers across the country, that's a stress inducing emotional roller coaster of always worrying when I should be locking. You know what? As a client, you shouldn't be stressing out about this because you can't control it. As a loan officer, number one, you should not be stressing about this because you cannot control it. And if your clients are stressing out about it, then you are not doing your job effectively. So, and I'll again show you all the data to show why we should not be stressing about it at all. Nothing that we can control. I will say this. For those of us, or for those of you who are hoping for, rates in the, I'll even say fours, that's a long shot right now as well. And the reason why I say that is because the reason why we had rates in the threes were for reasons that we should never, ever hope happens again. It was an effect. It was a perfect storm of three things really coming together. The first one we definitely want again is low inflation. We had really, really low inflation for quite a while. We definitely would love for that to happen again. And inflation is the number one driver of mortgage rates. So the longer that inflation stays low, the more it'll pull interest rates down, which is great. The second thing that happened was a quick recession induced by the pandemic of COVID-19. Usually recessions are number one, deflationary, which affects rates, but also recessions usually cause long-term rates to go down to begin with. And then third, we had an overactive Federal Reserve led by a bunch of lawyers who thought that they needed to get involved. And so then they started purchasing treasuries, long-term treasuries, and mortgage-backed securities. When you toss in a player in a market that should not be there, it has major effects. So the more treasuries and mortgage-backed securities that were bought, the lower the rate went. The higher the demand on those items, the lower they can pay, right? So if investors, like if the market, like let's say they're buying treasuries and treasuries are being released at 2%, right? Well, but there's tons of buyers in the market, then the treasury can say, well, we'll offer 1.5%. You're still going to buy it? Cool. Then I'm going to keep offering lower and lower return, and people are going to keep buying and buying and buying, right? And so if the Federal Reserve is in that market and buying tons of it, it's causing rates to go down too. So we had a perfect storm of 3% mortgage rates. So we should honestly never, ever want that to happen again. We don't want a quick, sudden recession brought on by some sort of a pandemic. It's not good for anybody, obviously. And then we don't want unnatural players in any of our markets. And that's one of the major factors for price instability or any volatility in any kind of market, right? There's always going to be little recessions, dips here or there, but the more you stay out of it, the quicker you allow us to recover. So having said all of that, let's get into the data on why you should not worry about the rate and or play. You should not be trying to play the dips. If you're in a position to refinance, yeah, be ready when conventional rates dip to 6% or get under 6% a little bit. Be ready to pull the trigger because you already own the house. If you're looking to buy, then you should not be worrying about that. Let's go to, okay. So first thing we need to really talk about is what causes interest rates to move, right? The main thing is inflation, like I said before. The lower the rate of inflation for the longer period of time, rates are going to slowly come down. In the short term, buying and selling of mortgage-backed securities on a daily basis is going to cause those to move around, plus treasury bond yields as well. So long-term treasuries also affect mortgage rates because they're very, very closely tied together. Investors look at those as very similar, safe long-term investments. So the more people that buy treasury bonds, long-term treasuries, and those yields go down, mortgage rates will come down as well a little bit. So, but one thing that does not cause mortgage rates to move is the Fed funds rate. So do not stop talking about the Fed. The Federal Reserve does not matter. What we want is for them to stay out of it. because they cause more harm than good. Now, here is the last, going back to 1971, the rate of inflation versus the average mortgage rate. So, as you can see here, as we saw this massive spike in inflation in the 70s, once it finally got under control, right? Inflation finally came down and held sustainable low levels. Mortgage rates slowly worked their way down. There's obviously peaks and valleys, and that's what the problem that people are trying to, that are thinking about right now, is they are trying to time these little valleys. Oh, I'm going to buy right here. Oh, no, shoot, I missed my window. Oh, I'm going to buy right here. Crap. Oh, I'm going to buy right here. Nope, didn't happen. They're trying to play these little peaks and valleys. And so what this is like, this is maybe economic contraction or some weird something weird happened at this time that caused markets to freak out a little bit. So they ran to safe assets like long-term treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, which caused rates to dip. And then everyone was like, "Oh no, everything's great." Boo, and the market takes off again. So if the stock market rises, there's positive vibes about the economy, then rates will, hold or tick back up. But if inflation is low, the overarching trend, as you can see, is it goes down. So that's what we're in a cycle of right now. So if we really want to talk about inflation itself, because that's the main driver of mortgage rates. So the actual effect of inflation is constantly building. We're not in deflation. We're in a period of disinflation where inflation, the rate of inflation is going down, but it's not a negative. We're not in a negative inflation period, right? So if you really think about it, inflation on 2021 was 1.3%, and then it jumped to 6.4 in 2020. Of course, this is in February, just kind of lining it up, monthly, and then 5.5, and then 3 and 3.9, and then the most recent 2.8. So inflation is going down, right? But things are still getting more expensive because that's what inflation is. So if there's a product for $10 in February 2021, a year later it costs 1064, a year later it costs 1122, a year later it costs 1166, and now it costs 1198. So obviously these are not exact accurate numbers, but this just gives you the effect of what inflation has on the cost of goods or services. Just because inflation's down now to 2.8 or whatever the metric is for a certain indice doesn't mean that products are getting cheaper. It's just that they're getting more expensive by a slower rate. But as we can see, has the same effect on mortgage rates. So February 2021, the average mortgage rate conventional was 2.73, and that includes all buy down costs, everything. So people are buying rates down as well. So, and then a year later, 9, then a year later, 6.62, then a year later, 6.77, and then this past February, 6.85. Inflation is going down, but mortgage rates are holding. So they're not rising anymore, but it takes time. Like I showed you on the last slide, it takes time for inflation to have its full effect and fully pull mortgage rates down. But we've only seen inflation in the twos for a few months now, really. And so that's kind of one thing to look for as we move forward. So a lot of people are waiting for rates to come down. That's what the gist of this article is that you're caught in that spiral, that you're caught in this analysis paralysis series where you're just trying to figure out when I should pull the trigger, right? And what I usually ask for is, what is your strike price? Because like what is that rate that you're looking for? Because if it's like 5.5, you should really reconsider on if you really should wait that long for that to happen, because it may take longer than you think. And so if someone is saying, okay, once you figure out what your rate is, that your goal is, now you need to look at it and say, is this actually realistic or not? Because luckily, if you are a realtor friend of mine, you get updates from me with this exact template to show what my rates are for that day. And I send these out every week. So I have a track record. And so I send these out. And as you can see, if we look at the conventional, 6.875, 6.875, 6.75 at par. And then I started doing discounts here. So if you could buy it down to 6.49, right? All looks pretty similar, right? We'll look at the dates. October 2022, January 2024, April 2025. The rates are all pretty darn similar, meaning it takes time for the market to get back to where we want it to get to. So should you be waiting around and doing this? Absolutely not. If you're ready, willing, and able to buy, stop over analyzing it. Stop waiting for that 5.75. It might happen eventually. It might happen for 2 days, which we'll get to in a minute, because it has happened over the last couple of years very quickly. Too quickly for you to start looking for a house, find a house, go under contract, and then actually get the rate locked. And those people who are offering like rate locks before you should like lock before you shop, how are you going to know when it's going to dip? If it dips for like 3 days, did you lock 20 days before that in the hopes that you're ready to go ahead and, or are you going to lock before you shop? So are you going to, lock right when it goes down to 5.75 or 5.99 and then hope you find a house within that 15-day window or whatever it is? Best of luck. Best of luck. I mean, you could always try to do that, but again, you're missing out on the bigger picture. So if you do that and everyone else does that, is the seller now going to pay your closing costs? Or is the seller going to provide another $10,000 to pay for all the closing costs? Or are you going to have to pay that up front? Just because you waited for a lower rate, that might save you, 7,500 bucks a month, but now you're 10K out of pocket. What is the best strategy for you in the grand scheme of things? One thing that we really need to talk about is Texas is still growing, so there's still going to be a demand, as we come through this and as rates do. And I feel like they've been consistent now. Like this is kind of where we're going to be at. It's going to keep coming down very, very, very slowly, like I said before. But Texas has been growing for quite a while, and it really isn't showing many signs of slowing down. So, an average of 1.5% growth since 2010. U-Haul is the best way to track people moving around. They report one-way rentals, so people picking up a U-Haul and saying, "I'm not coming back." And so this past year, South Carolina was the highest destination for one-way rentals last year. Texas had been number one for like 3 years in a row. We were number two last year, and Texas was the number one destination 6 times out of the last 9 years. So there's no signs of Texas's growth slowing down. Companies are moving their headquarters to Texas constantly. Good business climate, low taxes, easy to start businesses and grow them. And then, and we also export. We're the number one exporter of all the states. So we export more product to other states than any other state. So these are just signs to show you that there is not going to be a slowdown or when rates do dip, the demand is certainly going to be there. There are going to be a lot of people who are waiting around and analyzing too much, and then it is going to flood the market. We've seen this every single time. So what I have up right now is the 10-year Treasury yield. It's at what tracks most closely with mortgage rates, and it's the easiest barometer for us to see what mortgage rates have been doing. This is the last 5 years of it. So as you can see, 2022, this is when everything kind of started spiking. But every single time that they dip, it's just a quick dip, and it's been like we've been seeing that over and over and over again. So at some point here in 2023, got a little dip in the spring. Then this was really bad. Fall of 2023, rates had risen to their highest levels that we've seen. And then this is the beginning of 2024. End of 23, 24, everyone thought, oh, we're out of the woods. We're out of the woods. Look at that. Look at that little dip. But nope, it was not. And then chugging along, September of 2024, this was again when everyone thought we were out of the woods. The Fed cut the funds rate. Everyone thought that was a great thing, when in reality, it's not. It signaled to the market that the Fed was done fighting inflation, but everyone knew inflation wasn't done yet. So then what happens? Rates go back up. So every time we see this, and so all of these people are sitting there thinking, oh, I'm going to wait for this little dip. The only ones who can wait for these little dips right here are people that already own a home, that bought a home here, and now they can refi here. Those are the ones who should be watching that. If you're looking to buy a house, stop worrying about this, because we're getting look at this little dip earlier in the month and then a shot back up, right? The market is very, very scared to understand that. The market is reacting to other things that do not directly correlate to long-term interest rates, right? And this past spring, they were reacting. This was reactions to right here. This is a reaction. Look at that. April 4th. What was going on at the beginning of April? The tariff talk. This was tariffs are implemented, and everyone freaking out, and they were not sure, and they thought it was the end of the world. Pretty scary if the whole world thinks that we're going to go into a recession because one country decides to implement tariffs when all other countries all have tariffs. What does that tell you? Kind of tells you they're a little too dependent on us and they need to do some stuff for themselves, right? But anyway, what was going on here, right? April 4th, tariffs. tariffs being implemented, the market freaking out, overreacting, skittish investors like day traders and whatnot, overreacting, rushing into safe assets like treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. So rates dipped for a day and a half. Look at that. They dipped Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the next Monday when tariffs are paused because all the other countries started freaking out. What happened? We got massive gains in the stock market and then rates shot back up. This is too quick. This is too quick for you to find a house. It's not going to happen, So stop worrying about it. Stop worrying about trying to play these little dips. If you like a house, if you're ready, willing, and able, if you can afford it, buy it. And then what we will do is time the market for a refi whenever we get down to a certain level. And we'll find out what that strike price is, and we'll do it. Circling back to this, if you're a loan officer is not having realistic conversations with you about how the market works and how we cannot control any of this, all we can do is look at the data and analyze it. And this is what my feelings are, is that inflation is going to keep coming down. Mortgage rates will slowly work their way down. So are you wanting to wait another 18 months or not? Because in another 18 months, the house might cost more. But I actually can't guarantee you the house will cost more. What I can guarantee you is the seller pay concessions are going to be going away because it will be more of a balanced market. So if the house that you actually like that has activity that people want will go for full asking without any seller concessions. So is a slightly lower rate worth $10,000 less in your bank account? Just ask yourself that. But if your loan officer, if your lender is not having clear cut discussions with you on how this actually works, but if your loan officer does not understand how any of this works and is not having clear cut conversations with you, direct, setting good expectations, then they're doing a disservice to you. If you want my data, if you want to talk more about it, if you think you disagree with me, please let me know. But again, if you have economic jitters, or if your loan officer is got jitters as well, then you might need to get a second opinion because they're not doing you a good service by not clearly explaining how everything works. And if you think that you can time the market, think again. All you can do is make a decision with the information that you have at the time. And with how much things fluctuate, it is very, very difficult to time those dips because, like I showed you before, the dips are very, very quick. What we can do is know that things are getting better, that things will most likely be better in 18 months than they are now. But what I am encouraging my clients to do is to not worry about the rate right now, worry about what you can afford, the house that you like, and making an offer that puts you in the best position right now.